Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Free Press Live yet again on Thursday night. I'm your host, Michael Moynihan, and what a crackerjack panel we have for you tonight. As usual, crowd favorite and opinion editor at Newsweek, Batya Ungar-Sargon, editor-in-chief of the Jewish Chronicle, first-time guest, Josh Kraushaar, and for you righteous Gentiles and goys out there, you know him from Axios and National Journal. He's a big wig. And the young gun, go for it, Free Press reporter Franny Block. You can't get better than that. All right, we got a lot to cover today because there's a few things going on in the news. We got to get to this presidential debate, right? We did an episode of Honestly about it, but there's a lot more to talk about with different voices. But then, because of that debate, we have to answer the maybe $5 question, 5,000 lira question. Are Haitian immigrants eating pets? They're not, by the way. There's some MAGA infighting, which always is amazing, between a loony Laura Loomer and, weirdly, the less loony Marjorie Taylor Greene. And finally, our colleges pledging that they won't take political stances anymore as institutions, probably not in the classroom. All right, on Tuesday night, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris took the stage for their first debate, and the polls indicate what I felt, a lot of people felt, that Harris was the winner. But throughout the night, she kept her cool, and Trump less so. So here's DT, Donald Trump, taking the bait when Harris claimed that people leave his rallies early.
Responders to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back.
In the history of politics, the biggest, the best, you fell for it. All right, and here is Donald J. Trump cramming in a bunch of buzzwords into one sentence. We'll see what this means.
Things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania.
The ones in prison. So Harris comes across as, kind of prepared and, didn't get the word salad that we kind of maybe expected. And here she is talking about abortion, one of the issues that she's kind of strongest on for Democrats.
Over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
Josh Kraushaar, thanks for joining us. We're very happy to have you on this panel. What do you think? I mean, she was, a lot stronger than I expected. And, I guess the low expectations, because I'm on Twitter too much and I see these compilations of her making not a ton of sense. What is your read on what happened on Tuesday night?
So, Michael, first, it's great to be here as a first-time participant on the live show. Look, Kamala Harris is an accomplished prosecutor, and her best moments in political life have been when she's had time to practice, to work on some lines and have the stage to herself and to execute with those scripted lines. And we saw that back in 2020 in her one moment that she did well in the 2020 presidential campaign when she attacked Biden for palling around with segregation of senators and busing. And that was her high point of a pretty otherwise lousy campaign, but she couldn't follow through. There wasn't a whole lot of strategy beyond that. But she's shown that she can kind of deliver the scripted moment, and she certainly did that in spades on this on the first debate, and maybe only debate we're going to see. Look, she was practicing for almost a week in Pittsburgh. We were trying to reach the Harris campaign to get comments on a lot of important news going on, and they a lot of feedback we got was that they're practicing the debate. She doesn't have time to actually deal with response of what's going on.
Josh, let me ask you a quick follow-up. The question I was asking myself while watching this is, she's doing extraordinarily well, and the people are reacting, and the polls are showing these snap polls that she did very well. Is that going to prompt her to say, maybe I can get in front of the news media now? Maybe I should actually do another interview rather than just the softball Dana bash. Do you expect her to stay underground, do the Operation Bubble Wrap?
She should. I mean, I think people can sniff out someone who's not being authentic, and I still think she has issues over authenticity and whether she actually means what she says and whether she can actually talk beyond just having those nice scripted moments at a debate. So look, she actually said today, I think at her rally in North Carolina, she wants to do more interviews. So we'll see if she means what she says. She's certainly, because of the success she had in Philadelphia, she wants to do more debates. I mean, the debate reminded me of the straight A student who practiced and studied for days and weeks, showing off her skills, and she did the work, she did the homework, and Donald Trump was winging it. He's doing what a lot, kind of reminds me in high school when I save things till the last minute and think you can get away with getting an A for the test, and it didn't work out. She was prepared. I mean, look, she had some great lines. The one thing that hasn't gotten, the quote that she said that I haven't seen get as much attention, was her line about him leaving office with the worst unemployment crisis since the Great Depression, the worst public health epidemic in a century, and the worst attack on democracy since the Civil War. I'm surprised that was sort of one of those things that the speechwriters, I'm sure, drew up in the practice, and she landed quite a punch at the debate.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say the very first part of that, kind of not his fault, the unemployment stuff, right? And the pandemic, really,
Perception is reality, and
correct.
And Michael, that's the debate that she's not the change candidate, right? She's not. She's the vice president. She needs to convince voters, improbably, that she's been in office and she's responsible for everything that's gone on over the last 4 years. But somehow she's the change from Trump. That's what she's trying to convince people.
I would say, Josh, except for when she isn't, because the beginning of the Afghanistan question, she was like, when Joe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, it's like, oh, now you're not responsible. Francesca Block. What did you make of this? I mean, I think Josh is right about this stuff, but let's focus a little bit on Trump here. I mean, there's been a couple days. Your instant reaction's often different, and I've seen people make the argument that, hey, I think that went down with his base, and it wasn't as bad as the chattering classes and the media type actually think, that it's just a typical Trump performance. What do you think?
Well, I think his base isn't who he needed to play to here in the debate. He needs to get independent voters, moderate voters, swing voters on his side to actually win the election. And so does Kamala Harris. And I think his performance was not something that would have been appealing to those voters that were maybe looking for something that seemed a little bit less chaotic for their presidential candidate. So I think in terms of playing to his base, I don't see his base changing their opinions. I think people probably were like, yeah, that's old typical Trump. But I think in terms of appealing to the voters he actually needs for this election, I don't know if it landed very well for them.
Batya, I'm wondering if you've changed at all. I mean, look, we did an immediate reaction after this, but the people who haven't listened to the Honestly that we did that evening, and shame on you if you haven't. What is wrong with you? It's free. It's amazing. Batya, have you changed your mind on this? Do you think he did better? Are a couple days kind of marinating in this stuff? What do you think now?
So everyone should go and listen to the Honestly conversation we had. It was a lot of fun.
Yes,
we were coming right off of this, it was great TV. I mean, whatever you say about it, right? My analysis then, I do stand by it. And it was that Trump did very poorly for all of the reasons that make him a good president. And Harris did very well for all of the reasons that she would be a bad president. And what I mean by that is that Trump very obviously was incapable of taking the advice that he must have been given by the entire consultant class, every elite, every donor, every, person with, any kind of power. telling him exactly what Franny just very wisely said, which is, this is the moment to keep it together and just talk about your record. You've got it. Just be cool, calm, and collected. And he was incapable of heeding that advice because he cannot listen to what the elites want from him, which is exactly why he was able to accomplish so much as a president. Because as we discussed at length and honestly, he took on the elites of the left and the right as president on things like immigration and tariffs. If you think that, elite conservatives, elite Republicans like tariffs, like, I got a bridge to sell you, right? And meanwhile, what Harris did was exactly what Josh just described. She was an amazing, amazing actor. She memorized all the lines. She delivered all the lines. She was a perfect reflection of what the elites in the Democratic Party, the McKinsey consultants, and everybody who's telling her what to do and how to sound and what to everything. She was a perfect reflection, a perfect apparatchik. And so she really nailed that event. But is that really what you want? Do you really want somebody in office who is going to simply be a reflection of this kind of like permanent bureaucracy of the Democratic Party? Or do you want someone who's going to tell the elites to go screw themselves because his job is to reflect the American people? So that's kind of what I said then. I really do stand by that. I have seen people say that if you are a struggling working class person and you saw Trump's performance, you wouldn't have seen that as bad. You would have seen that as an adept and accurate reflection of your own rage at the situation. And her kind of glib smugness would have come off as a kind of out of touch elite person. Franny, I wanted to ask you something. I a little bit hesitate to ask it because I'm not sure if it's sexist to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you because somebody asked me this.
I hope so.
I didn't know how to answer. And so I'm really curious what you think. They asked me if I, as a woman, kind of related to this kind of high-powered, in my opinion, extremely good-looking woman, like being up there in a very powerful position, not only holding her own, but really, really kind of, taking Trump to task in a way that did exhibit a lot of kind of power. If I related to that as a woman, if I felt proud or if I felt represented, and I really didn't know, I'm still struggling with whether I did. And I'm wondering if I could sort of offload that question onto you.
Well, I think I see that. I mean, she did have a presence on stage that I think was very powerful. And I mean, obviously we saw Hillary Clinton do that back in 2016. And I think people admired her for that as well, though I think it also rubbed some other people the wrong way. So I guess kinda. I also don't know how to answer the question. But I think what made it better and more powerful was the fact that we didn't hear her at the debate say things like, as somebody who's going to be the first woman president or the first Black president or the first Indian American president, the fact that she didn't play in to those DEI politics made it more powerful, in my opinion.
100%.
As a man, I want to talk to Josh man to man. So you guys can go somewhere else for a moment. We're doing the Jezebel section for the moment. But Josh, quickly, before we move on, I wanted to ask you something about this because, what you see from Donald Trump is what you typically see. You see him come untethered. He's very easy to agitate when you talk about the rallies and stuff. But he's also a terrible debater. He's just objectively a bad debater. And you see what he does in the spin room after. You see what's, very, very prominent in conservative media, conservative talk radio, et cetera. It is an attack on the moderators. And I think that actually would have been, because I think they were very bad, that would have been a good strategy. What did you think about the kind of the moderators and how they handled things? And do you think that people on the right and, Trump partisans are, overplaying the moderator things? That's what they're focusing on at the moment.
Well, first, let me get to the gender politics and then connect it to the moderators. That was a very alpha male move, by the way,
yes.
Michael. Go into the
yeah.
losing, by the way. It's a losing.
Yeah, Batya, I'm talking. Okay.
I just have to weigh in here. Like Francesca made the great point that like Hillary leaned in so much to her gender in 2016. Yeah. Her slogan was "I'm with her." Like all the ads were all about the historic nature of her. Kamala has actually, this is where I actually have been pleasantly surprised by her messaging at the convention, at the debate. She has not leaned into identity politics. She has won the debate on merit, not on like special pleading. And she kicked his ass. Like she really did very well on merit-based grounds. It wasn't identitarian grounds. And she has been very careful. She knows that it's very tricky. Gender politics plays a big role. There's a reason America hasn't elected a woman president. And I think she understands that if she leans into that too much, that was one of the biggest mistakes that Hillary made. I also think that there was a little bit of a psyop that we've all been talking about when she went after Trump's narcissism by mentioning the crowd size. And I thought Trump was actually kind of showing off his dominance early on. And she looked a little nervous at the beginning, asked about the economy, one of her weakest subjects. And then she just threw him off psychologically by mentioning the crowd size and kind of, punching him where it hurts. And that was just a brilliant psyop move. It was more about psychology than actual political point scoring. So that was another a way of turning the tables around on the sort of dominance versus the lack of dominance, for lack of a better word. To the point of the moderators. Look, I did not have the same negative reaction to the moderators as a lot of people did. I thought Jake and Dana did a better job for the CNN debate. I don't like it when moderators try to offer fact checks in real time. I think that's the point of a debate. And I counted 3 or 4 times where they tried, and on 2 of the 3 times that they tried to do fact checks, I thought it was inappropriate and obnoxious and put the finger on the scale for Kamala Harris. I will say, though, that I thought it was appropriate for them to weigh in. I think they were prepared to talk about the Springfield, Ohio case. That wasn't a political debating point. That wasn't about a policy. That was targeting a community in a small town where Donald Trump was making stuff up. That could, frankly, we've seen it's actually had an effect. People have been threatened. They've had to close city government in Ohio because of the tens of millions of people watching and the lies that went out from Donald Trump. Laura Loomer apparently was the one feeding him this information. So I actually do think that there are some moments where you do weigh in. I think they were prepared to weigh in on that. I thought that one was appropriate. The other ones, if you want to debate about abortion, let the candidates debate about abortion. Violent crime, the violent crime rate is up, is down from 2022 to 2023, but it's up from 2019 to 2023. So that's the whole point of debating. You make the argument, you use the facts at your disposal.
Well, this is actually a great transition to our next topic, because one of the, let's call it, notable moments of the debate Tuesday night was, as Josh pointed out, when President Trump brought up the story of migrants in Springfield, Ohio, allegedly eating people's pets. Here's Trump.
Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
So the story's been all over the news this week. We keep hearing that it is a baseless, debunked rumor. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine was insisting on CBS that the story is false. Let's watch that.
Governor, I never thought, yes, it's a while ago. I never thought I would ask you a question like this. Is anyone with undocumented status in Ohio, is any legal citizen resident of Ohio eating dogs or cats illegally?
Well, Major, this is something that came up on the internet, and the internet can be quite crazy sometimes. And look, the mayor Rue of Springfield says, no, there's no truth in that. They have no evidence of that at all. So I think we go with what the mayor says. He knows his city.
But Springfield residents themselves have painted a different picture. Here are a few of them at a city commission meeting.
In the park, grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them,
stealing animals from farmers and leaving their severed heads at the side of an old school where children play, relieving themselves in public, making some barbaric stew out of the birds that live in our park. This is insanity, and it has to stop.
So the context that this comes in is unprecedented violence and starvation in Haiti, which President Biden responded to earlier this year by granting temporary legal status to hundreds and thousands of Haitian migrants, which brings us back to Ohio. Over the last few years, 20,000 of these Haitian migrants have been settled in Springfield, a town of just 60,000 souls. Now, it's important to note that not everybody is unhappy about the influx of migrants. Some people have really taken to them, like this factory owner.
McGregor is the CEO of McGregor Metal, which makes welded parts for the auto and farm industries. Right now, about 10% of his workforce is Haitian, over 30 employees.
I wish I had 30 more. Our Haitian associates come to work every day. They don't have a drug problem. They'll stay at their machine. They'll achieve their numbers. They are here to work. And so in general, that's a stark difference from what we're used to in our community.
But as my friend, Cleveland radio host and producer Davrio Moro pointed out in an op-ed for Newsweek, the influx of migrants is taking a toll on the city's most vulnerable residents. It is exacerbating problems specifically for Black residents and those living below the poverty line, which is actually most of Springfield. The median income there is $27,000 a year. In other words, this seems to me to be a microcosm of the immigration debate that we're having more broadly, where the elites of both the left and the fringe right want to make it about race or eating cats, when the truth is it's about the rights of American citizens and workers not to have exactly the kind of competition for jobs and resources that the ruling class loves. Of course, desperate migrants will work for cheaper, demand fewer breaks and protections, and make factory owners and other employers happy. This is an argument against mass immigration, not for it. Now, Michael, I know you totally disagree with me and you love that factory owner and think he has such a point. Why don't you make the libertarian argument for us on why this is okay?
Well, I'll make a slightly different argument and come back to the libertarian one. The first one is that you actually made the argument that Donald Trump should have made, obviously. I mean, the argument is a very easy one to make. Unfortunately, when you have this utter bullshit stories that are circulating on Twitter, and you have these people who are so terminally online that they're finding these videos of people saying these things. We saw a couple of them. People say a lot of things. People are pretty crazy. And guess what? When word spreads around town, this is the thing that you understand in journalism. When, you have two people and, one tells the other person something, that's not two sources. That's one source that just told somebody else. And that's like 5 people in the town. It's like, there's a rumor started and everyone's like, they're eating ducks' faces and barbecuing in the street. And I don't know what she said. It was like, it was a malevolent stew or something, which actually sounded quite good. But yeah, I mean, to this point, I think it's, and I'm not going to make the point that maybe you want me to make, I can, but it is true. It's like these Rust Belt towns where you have factories like this. The question, of course, is, why are they filling these slots with Haitian workers? What is the pay? What is the union situation in these factories, et cetera? There's a lot of stuff there for Donald Trump to grab onto. The problem with Donald Trump is not necessarily that he's not disciplined. He is disciplined. He's disciplined in his own way of acting, which is terrible and stupid, and does things like this. He said, I saw it on TV. You didn't see it you saw it on the internet, or Laura Loomer told you. Then you have a problem within your campaign of basic discipline, just very, very basic discipline. Because when immigration comes up, what is the issue that the Republicans are strongest on? Immigration and usually economy. It's, those two things. You could say 1,000 different things. I mean, go to Aurora, Colorado. Because there are people online, kind of lefty people online, trying to debunk this story in Aurora, Colorado, that there was an apartment complex that was taken over by violent Venezuelan migrants who are part of a gang. And that story was partially debunked, quote unquote. And then a bunch of people came forward and said, no, it's absolutely true. Why not use that? Because crime might not be up in certain places, and it might be uncertain, but you have these numbers, you can play games with these crime numbers. But the feeling that Americans have is that the city that is closest by to them is more violent. It is overrun by migrants. That's just the thing. Talk about New York City. I mean, why not New York City? And say, Donald Trump is from New York City, and say, even in my city, the richest city in America, they're giving, debit cards to migrants. They're putting them in $225 a night hotels. When you say that to somebody, that people can't find hotels, supply and demand driving the price of hotels in New York because there's migrants staying in them. Now, there's a lot of really interesting conversation can be had about why that's happening, should it be happening, but those are facts, and those hit people in a very specific place.
Right. So, and Michael brings up a good point, Josh. This is something I really don't understand, which is the Republicans continuously refuse to talk about the economic question when it comes to immigration, which is the one that is most salient for working class people. I mean, when I was reporting my book, Second Class, I spoke to, I mean, this was something that everyone agreed with. If people were Democrats or Republicans, they all said the same thing to me. I love immigrants. There are immigrants in my community. I wish them well. I understand why they came here. They made my life worse because I am now getting paid less. I could see it in my paycheck. My kids are not going to have access to the kind of jobs that my parents had because of mass immigration. And by the way, they're right about that on the numbers. And yet, for some reason, Republicans are always finding the most cockamamie stories to talk about this. I mean, obviously, the crime is real and horrific, but it is not statistically significant as far as I can tell. And yet they refuse. Is it because at the end of the day, they are still beholden to the kind of corporate classes, interests who want this slave labor?
Well, a few things. On the political front, I actually think what Trump said was sort of goofy and not dishonest, but I think he may not even have known better. JD Vance was tweeting about this, and I don't have the tweet right in front of me, but he basically said it doesn't matter if it's true or not. Like we're going to fight them, like the media, the corrupt traditional media is horrible and they spread lies and facts don't matter, basically. And I fear that, on this story, and I agree, like we're having a very substantive conversation about the economic impacts, the cultural impacts, the social impacts. Vance kind of said the quiet part out loud on Twitter, that facts don't matter, and we just want to kind of create our own reality, even if it is demeaning and frankly like libelous to the Haitian American community, which is they're legal migrants. They're part of a program designed to resettle them in Springfield. So that's the thing, that's the sinister part, that if that's where we're headed, if that's the trend of our politics, that truth doesn't matter, that we can just make stuff up and see what sticks. That's the bigger issue here, I think, as far as the politics go. Look, on immigration, Batya, I agree with you on a lot of. I mean, these are complicated issues that the humanitarian part of a lot of governors and elected officials wants to find a way to deal with migrants who are often escaping from brutal regimes that are trying to make a better life in America. I kind of grew up with sort of the ethos. It was a very Republican, conservative ethos of the American dream, where people work their way up and become successful. And we talk about merit and victimology. I mean, that's always the argument of merit, that you work hard and you do the work and you succeed. And it's been a lot more challenging, I think, in recent years for a whole host of reasons. But to see immigrants kind of being demonized and not acknowledging the subtle, or not acknowledging the nuances and the fact that there are complicated conversations that need to be had. But that's I don't think politically that's what Trump and Vance are getting at. And I've covered the immigration issue in politics. It's been going on for decades. Trump is not the first candidate to exploit sort of the fears and anxieties in communities like in Springfield. I also think I think the impact is economic, but I think the political anxieties are cultural. I don't think the people you saw in that town hall meeting, I don't think they're necessarily worried about the economic situation. I think there's frankly more baser motives, and sadly, among a lot of people. And I also think that on the other side, when you have dramatic change, I mean, one of the first rules that I've learned covering politics is that rapid change, if a community changes dramatically, if you bring in like we're seeing in some major cities, like significant numbers of immigrants, of migrants coming in, that is disruptive. It actually can cause more harm than good, and incrementalism is sort of the way to go. So I understand why people are feeling the way they are, but I tend to think that even though there is this economic reality that we're kind of elites talking about the economic impact of these communities, but politically speaking, the public perception is often on identity grounds, cultural grounds.
I mean, I encountered this story, Franny, as a Twitter meme. I mean, I never for a minute thought that it was real. I have to admit, I laughed at a lot of the memes. I thought there were some high quality memes of Trump saving cats and kittens and ducks, and I laughed at them. And I'm wondering, what do you make of that? The fact that this was a kind of like, it seems to me like Josh is right, that Vance's reaction to it, which is we're in this post-truth moment, we're in the meme moment of like, it sort of skipped the outrage moment, went straight to the memification. Like, what does that tell us, like both about our political moment, but also about how young people potentially would be consuming this story, who spend a lot of time online and get most of their news there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that we are experiencing the meme election. If Brat Summer was not the absolute example of that. And I mean, I've seen countless memes from the debate the other night, from my friends sending them to me, seeing them on Twitter. You know, every line is made into something that's funny. You know, I think in one sense, it's people being harmless and just making jokes. But I think in another sense, it's also kind of it's a reflection, I think, of also how people engage with politics more broadly and generally. I think there is kind of an exhaustion with engaging issues on a substantive level, especially because now we do live in this society where people don't know what's true and what's not anymore. And so they just want to laugh about it and make fun of it. And I think, I don't know, I wonder if it's almost an example of people giving up a bit on politics and just saying, whatever, let's just make this meme and laugh about it and move on.
The meme election, that's really smart.
Meme election and fake, but true, right? That's the Josh thing, fake but accurate. All right, before we move on, I got to shake the tin cup. I'm sorry about this, but we all got to get paid. You know, we want to implore you. It's not just for us, it's for you to go to the FP.com and become a subscriber today, because it helps us and it helps you. Because you get unbelievable stuff. Not all of it's free. And behind that paywall is some of the greatest stuff that we do. And all right, so let's get to some more craziness, because everything is crazy. Right-wing media personality Laura Loomer, who I think I first saw when she chained herself to Twitter headquarters. Am I remembering that right? And ran onto the stage during a play. She's been traveling as part of Trump's entourage, including to the 9/11 event, where she didn't mention her personal theory that she's said on Twitter that it was an inside job. And so she also tweeted some deeply offensive remarks about Kamala Harris. So let's put this up on the screen and see if I can actually see it and read it. But it's the White House will smell like curry. And a friend of mine said, that sounds pretty good, actually. And you will get something through a call center, because call centers are in India. I don't even understand that joke, but it's about how Indians are in call centers. Okay, I think that, you know, this is obviously a bit of racist. I think it's just obviously racist. I mean, you're attacking her for being Indian, and civil rights hero and monitor of Jewish space lasers, Marjorie Taylor Greene, weighed in, telling Loomer to get rid of the tweet. So this is MTG's tweet. This is appalling and extremely racist. This Marjorie Taylor Greene. It does not represent who we are as Republicans or MAGA. This does not represent President Trump. She's on the plane with him. This type of behavior should not be tolerated ever. Laura Loomer, take this down when Marjorie Taylor Greene is calling you a racist. So it's a problem. Here is Marjorie Taylor Greene a few years back talking about Muslims in Congress.
There is an Islamic invasion into our government offices right now. Okay, you saw after midterm elections we saw so many Muslims elected. I don't know the exact number, but there were quite a few. We had that woman out of Minnesota. Now she's going into Congress and she's got to wear a head covering. You know, they want to put their hand on the Quran and be sworn in. No, you have to be sworn in on the Bible.
Well, you don't, but wow, but the curry smell really just offended MTG there. Guys, I'll tell you what, I saw this, and Laura Loomer, and those of you who don't know about her, your life is so much better than mine, because unfortunately we live in this world and have to, you know, interact with people like this. She's a foul individual who, and I'm just going to say it, appears to have some mental health issues. She's a bit of a crazy person. I mean, 9/11 is an inside job, and she is yesterday on September 11th. This is not even a big news story. This is how far away we are from 9/11. I was in New York City on 9/11, and it's just kind of passing these days without people noticing. And so much so that the former president of the United States is, I think, in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where a plane was taken down by people who heroically tried to save themselves, with Laura Loomer, who tweeted that 9/11 was an inside job. Josh, because we're on the internet and because the free press allows me the freedom, what the ever-loving fuck is going on? This is really crazy to me. I mean, I know this has been going on for a long time. I hear people saying it. There's been cranks and weirdos that have been elevated in this version of the Republican Party. But good Lord, on the plane during a campaign that is a razor-thin margin that I suspect if it was another candidate would not be a razor-thin margin. What is going on? What do you make of this?
Boy, there's so many things I want to say. Number one, I mean, it is striking. I had the same reaction as you, Michael, that we're now, 23 years since 9/11 happened. It still seems very fresh in my memory, but there's a whole generation that wasn't either alive or doesn't remember 9/11. And I think some of the lack of seriousness in our politics, the lack of, the fact that, we barely talk about foreign policy and we don't have serious conversations about national security, no less having a crank, a 9/11 denier in Trump's entourage during that somber moment. It's disgraceful, but we're not a serious people anymore. And I do fear that my second point is that the memification, as we've all been talking about so eloquently, just really is doing damage to our discourse and our democracy, and it's not getting better. I mean, the downstream effects of our culture are seen in our politics, and we're seeing this getting worse every election cycle, and the reward for being crazy is now like what's normal on TikTok. Like TikTok rewards like people who are just nuts. And it amplifies their views, and these platforms that actually reward extremism and reward, frankly, like some people that I think are a little off, and that is scary when your incentive is to be crazy to get clicks or to get attention. And I don't think enough people, especially at the tech, at a political level, but also at the tech level, that are creating these products, I don't think they realize what they're doing to our democracy and to our politics.
I mean, Franny, you said you were talking about this, the online nature of things. And, look, there's a lot to be said for there being no gatekeepers on certain things. I mean, I think it's great in some way. But if you go back to the 1960s, when there was a gatekeeper that, people like Tucker Carlson now sneer at, William F. Buckley, who made a very, concerted effort to get the kooks out of the Republican Party, because there's always going to be kooks in the party, right? And those are the Birchers and the anti-Semites and things like that. Are we just, I mean, look, I sometimes make the argument that, look, it's just a bunch of online people who are paying too much attention. But when there's somebody on the plane with the president going to the 9/11 stuff, am I wrong or am I hyperventilating a little bit that the Republican Party has a really bad kook problem, and it's actually in the mainstream of the party now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that she's on the plane, she's attending the 9/11 memorial events and has that past, I think it's clear that there is a problem with elevating these types of figures, frankly, who are maybe conspiratorial, although there's conspiratorial people on all sides, frankly, of our politics today. I do want to go back to just the idea of us all being a little bit too online. I mean, I have friends, I'm in my 20s. All of my friends get all of their information from TikTok now. Like when they want to Google something, they actually just go to TikTok and look it up.
Is that
there
true?
Instead. Yes.
That's not true.
That's
Franny,
true.
don't tell me that. Oh
That's
my God.
true.
Is that serious?
I don't.
I mean,
have
I'm in my
TikTok.
20s too, but I didn't know that. Wow. Holy cow.
So yeah, you got to get on TikTok to find all the things about the world. But I will say that, I think there are people that will say, oh, whatever's happening on the internet, yeah, it gets kind of crazy, but it's on the internet. But I think there's no better example of how what happens on the internet permeates our politics better than what Trump said at the debate about Haitian migrants, right? Here's this thing. It went viral on Twitter. It seems really crazy. Nobody looks into it. Nobody fact checks it. And it makes its way onto the presidential debate stage, right? And so I think that this is just another example of that. When those figures enter into the mainstream, all of a sudden, we no longer have any. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
I think it's an interesting point, because I mean, we have this saying that we repeat like a mantra, that Twitter isn't real life. But is it not real life when the president of the United States, former president of the United States, potentially the president again, makes it real life? It becomes real life when the president of the United States does bring that person along on the plane too. Something that really disgusts me, to the 9/11 thing. Batya, I wonder what you think about this. I mean, I see you kind of, I don't know how you fall on this one. Not necessarily about Laura Loomer, but because I think we agree on this, that we hate gatekeepers and everything. But is there not someone to keep some of these real cranks out of the party? Because I think it's really bad for the party too.
What's amazing is what we're seeing right now is a reversal of 2016, because it used to be that the Democrats who were catering to the elites were way too online, were constantly tacking way too far to the left to appeal to the super online crowd, and thus pushing all of this identity politics. And then 2020, defund the police, decriminalize illegal border crossing crap that Americans hate because they were super online. And meanwhile, Trump was cleaning up with the working class. And right now you have Donald Trump terminally online talking about Haitians eating cats, and Kamala Harris totally disavowing identity politics, totally disavowing special pleading, totally tacking to the center, disavowing herself, by the way, from 2020,
Yes,
because the Democrats have read the room, right? And not the online room, right? And meanwhile, the messaging to Trump is coming from inside the plane. I was asked recently on a conservative show, so you're voting for Trump? And I said, no, I'm an undecided voter. I am not going to vote for somebody whose closest advisor is tweeting that the White House is going to smell like curry. And I am not going to vote for somebody whose vice president cannot disavow a Holocaust minimizer / denier. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. And I'm one of the people who I feel I could have done a better job representing Trump at that debate than Trump did. I mean, I am such a fan of his policy, but you cannot travel on a plane with a person who says the White House is going to smell like curry. I'm sorry. That is a total red line. And you know why I'm so angry? Because his platform is a consensus platform. His agenda is a unity agenda. He's running with Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., and then he's sitting on a plane with a racist. It's so unacceptable and disappointing. It is a betrayal. It is a betrayal of his agenda and the working class Americans who rely on him to improve the lives of their children. So that's where I fall on that, Mike. I don't know if that's what you were expecting.
What I'm doing now is I'm frantically texting the Free Press social media people, say, can you clip this because Batya is an undecided voter? That just surprised me. I mean, and it's a good reason to be an undecided voter, because the plane is carrying racists. And, people also, look, there's a reason I think that the Free Press, I did an interview on Honestly with Victor Davis Hanson about this Martyr Maid guy, this Daryl Cooper guy, and what he says about World War II. And, a couple pieces, Neil Ferguson wrote one. I mean, we did a lot on this. And I think there's a good reason to do that. And it's because it really is permeating a certain element of the right. And it's like, I am totally fine if you want to debate Howard Zinn, who is a revisionist of the left. But there are kind of red lines here, like, wait a second. The reason these people hate Churchill is because they like Hitler, just so you know. That's why David Irving wrote a 2-volume thing, just defaming Churchill. But this is actually really, and so I started making a list. And if anyone wants to send me, emails, texts, tweets to add to this list of big social media accounts, big ones. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of followers who have a mixture of MAGA stuff and anti-Semitism. I mean, I will send you, maybe Josh, I'll send it to you so the Jewish Insider can say, here is a list. It's unbelievable. I am a person who says this wasn't happening with Elon Musk. I don't think it was a big, but it really is. It's really there. I'm seeing it so much.
And I think that what you just hit on, Michael, is the key point, which is for 10 years, they called them Nazis, and people like me were saying, this is a canard. I mean, that was Holocaust denial, right? To say like that these people are Nazis because they want a secure border, right? And now it turns out that they won't condemn Nazis. It's like, why are you proving the lamest, lowest form of democratic politics right. And that is what I find infuriating about it. Franny, what's your reaction to all of this fringe stuff online? I mean, is this something, I mean, how does this translate on TikTok into news? Is it only sort of fodder for democratic politics?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually thinking about it in terms of my own reporting. I spent a ton of time in Michigan last week, which we all know is a critical swing state in this election. And I was talking to this one young Jewish woman who told me, she's like, if you look to the extreme of either side, they're basically all holding hands. And she was talking about how in Detroit, there was this anti-Israel rally where David Duke was present, talking about how, you know, he was also, you know, being genocided by the Israelis, just like Palestinians. And so I think that there's this, I mean, it is the horseshoe theory that we're seeing in real time right now. And I think it's starting online, but it's permeating all aspects of society because these people are getting elevated, they're gaining their platforms, and they're, you know, they have followers and people that listen to what they say as gospel and don't question it.
One final thing I'm going to say on this is, as I think the goy in the virtual room, I'm not sure about Francesca. I haven't asked her yet, but she has a nice Italian first name, so I don't know about you, Francesca. But this is the Goyish response to this is, you know, this is the horseshoe theory that has existed from time immemorial. The oldest hatred is the oldest hatred for a reason. And if you go back to the 1920s, which these goofballs on the internet seem to want to go back to in so many ways and seem to be referencing it in ways that they don't quite understand, is that the argument was always, and this is the special place of Jews in the political debate, is you're blamed for literally everything. So on the far left, you're hated, on the far right, you're hated. And the argument then was the Bolshevik Revolution, which has been revivified by Candace Owens, of all people, who has multiple millions of followers, that the Bolshevik Revolution was a Jewish revolution. And then, you know, on the other side, it was the capitalists, the Jewish capitalists. It's the Rothschilds, it's the moneyed people. And there's something amazing when you look back at this stuff, that there's one continuity in politics over the years that is not interrupted by technology. It is not interrupted by any sort of strange aberrations in politics. It's that you can always blame the Jews. And when you start doing it, it is that you know that you've reached a very dark place, and both people have to start doing a very, very serious purge. Very serious purge. And no one's taking it seriously. Right. And I say this as the non-Jew in the panel, take it seriously, because even if you don't care about these issues, I do care about these issues, but even if you don't care about these issues, you have to understand that throughout history, that has always led to something darker. And I mean, the Holocaust is the darkest place you can go, right? But there's other darker elements too. If you think it's safe, it's the Jews, a small portion of the population. It's just actually about Israel. It's just actually trying to debate history. No. You don't understand history if you think that is the history of this type of hatred.
We have to transition to our next topic, but I can't move on without giving you, Josh, since we have the editor-in-chief of the Jewish Insider, just very quickly, in 30 seconds or less, is this going to impact the Jewish vote at all? Do you think? I mean, we have seen Jews trending slightly towards Trump, perhaps less than we might have thought after October 7th. It's now, I think, 60-40 maybe, where it used to be 70-30. Give us, in 30 seconds, the Jewish vote.
Yeah, there are a lot of politically homeless, moderate Jews, yeah, they're all over the political map, but there's a large critical mass of moderates, mainly moderate Democrats. We've seen these primaries against Jamal Bowman in New York, Cory Bush. The Democrats have actually cleaned house. They've ousted 2 squad members, and that's what it's going to take. Efforts within the parties, not the Republican Democratic battles, but the debates within the parties. And the thing about the discussion we just had that I think is concerning is I talk to Republicans and Democrats that acknowledge that the Tucker wing is a fringe in the Republican Party, online mostly, the pro-Hamas wing of that is a fringe, but they're scared of confronting those fringes. They worry that the shadows they see online represent something far darker and far bigger, and that's the courage. But Barry always talks about courage is contagious. It takes courageous people within the parties to speak out against the extremes within.
Very well put. And actually, it's a good transition to our next topic. For years, and particularly since 2020, college campuses have not shied away from taking strong stances on contentious social and political issues. But suddenly, there is a growing movement to adopt institutional neutrality and veer away from partisanship in college administrations. So after campuses erupted in pro-Palestinian protests and encampments last year, which are resurfacing now that the school year has begun, it seems that colleges recognize something had to change, especially with internal reports confirming that Jewish students on campus were harassed and threatened. So, Franny, set this up for us. What is the big question at stake here from your point of view, especially given the fact that young people just don't seem all that gung-ho on traditional American values like free speech?
So you can call me a hopeful optimist on this one, but I think this is an incredibly promising sign that universities want to recommit themselves to being institutions of higher learning, to recommit themselves to the values of actually wanting to promote open inquiry and discussion in the classroom. So I think this is a really great first step for universities to regain that value that I think we've seen has kind of eroded over the past few years. Now, that's the administrative side. There's also the student side of things. And I think the biggest threat to students and to bringing that value of open inquiry back into the student body is actually the other students on campus who there is so much vitriol that you can face for being seen as a wrong thinker on a college campus. And I even have a personal story with this. I wasn't in college all that long ago. And I remember when I majored in public policy in college, and the dean of my department sent out an email after the Kyle Rittenhouse decision came down. And Kyle Rittenhouse, he was the young guy, I think he was like 17 in Wisconsin. He ended up getting off, he had a gun and he ended up getting off scot-free. He basically, I think he went to trial. Okay, I'm exposing myself. I don't remember all details of the case. But basically what happened was the dean of my university, she issued a statement saying that the fact that he didn't face any punishment, the fact that he was put in front of a jury at trial of his peers and found to be not guilty, she said it was appalling. And I remember at the time being kind of struck by that and being like, that's kind of weird that she took such a strong stance on that. But I wasn't going to say anything. You know, I was scared. And I remember there was a group on campus that was a free speech advocacy group. So not a political group, not taking a side. And they issued this open letter saying she shouldn't have done that. She shouldn't have spoken out and made such a strong statement, calling it appalling, because she's the dean of a school that's literally a public policy school. It should be debated. It should be a conversation. And I remember that being circulated around, and all the kids that signed that letter, they were all ostracized. And I think that is what is really the biggest threat on college campuses for young people today, is that talk about courage. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there like that in front of your peers and stand up for what you believe in, even when it's something that's not that controversial, like institutional neutrality, which now that we're seeing it happen is actually becoming a popular trend. So I'm glad to see it happening. I think it's a good step in the right direction.
I love the way you frame that because I have taken actually a lot of heat from my own community on this. I'm an extreme skeptic of the sort of Jewish students are unsafe on college campus. You know, these Harvard students, the most privileged people on planet Earth, you know, saying that they are unsafe because they have to pass by these encampments of chanting lunatics. You know, I think that what they're actually asking for is the safetiest standard that has been granted to other minorities. And I feel that it is a crime against Jewish history for Jews to accept that standard rather than, you know, basically scoff at it. So I really love that you said ostracism, because that's really what they're facing, in my view, is unpopularity. Michael, am I just being totally callous about the feelings of these young people? Should they be expected to bear the brunt of, you know, their sociopathic, you know, co-students, or should this neutrality be imposed from above to protect them?
No, I mean, it's a complicated issue, and I, generally agree with this idea that nobody should adopt the status that, has become de rigueur on campus, that, make sure that everyone's protected. This is not a place that academically you should feel protected. That's where I think the difference is if people are being physically threatened. And by the way, the one place I disagree with you, Batya, is that even Harvard students and even the elites, they can feel safe too. It's like, even if you have a lot of money, it's all right to protect them too. But the thing about this is, I don't want to disagree, because I agree with Francesca on this. The one thing I would say is slightly different in my perspective here is that I want to acknowledge why this is happening. This is not because people have come to a conclusion of this is what an institution of higher learning should be doing. This is what our forward foot should be. This actually means stuff to us when we think about the kind of ideology of a university. No, it's because Congress happened, because people lost their jobs, because they had instances with the police on their campus. They couldn't function as a campus. And if it was just this idea about free speech, because it's insane that institutions should have any opinion on anything. I wrote a piece for the Free Press about my time at Vice. And one of the bits of that, I talked about when, the Kyle Rittenhouse is a very similar thing. George Floyd stuff happened. Every time there was something that was perceived to be a hate crime, some of which turned out to be false, we would get an email from HR saying, if you need any, counseling in this very dire time. It's like, we're fucking journalists. No, we're supposed to be out there talking to people, not weeping in the corner. Why? And also, why are you making statements? That was the thing, because there was this sort of instinct that to be on the right side of history, and it's always framed that way, that you have to take a position on something as an institution, particularly an institution that people don't really realize until recently is so deeply politicized, from, what the physiotherapy department to the film department to the Spanish department. The Spanish department at my university, remember I had to walk through it, and there were pictures of Che Guevara everywhere and Castro and stuff. And it's like, no, this is not what's supposed to be happening. So I don't know if it's gonna actually happen, or if they're doing this just because they're upset that people are on their tails at this point. It's going to take a lot institutionally to break this apart, because they are very, very, very political institutions.
So Josh, I want to hear your thoughts on all of that. One question I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on is, it's so amazing how they give up on all of these American values and suddenly rediscover them when they can be used as cudgels against Jews, right? Like, that was my first thought when seeing this. But, close us out, close the show out. Give us your final thoughts on, this neutrality.
Yeah, well, I agree with almost all of what Michael said, but let's be clear. These colleges' decisions to embrace institutional neutrality, which, by the way, 3 cheers for that. I think, by the way, these heated debates, the organizations, media companies, colleges certainly should not have ever been weighing in on contentious public policy issues. It was insane. 2019, 2020, I can't tell you how many friends and family members were getting, these missives on contested political issues, and as if there was only one right position from their companies. I mean, we lost our minds during that moment, and I'm very relieved that institutional neutrality is making a comeback. But let's be clear why colleges are doing this. It's because of what happened after October 7th, and the fact that they have just a large constituency of, frankly, like anti-Israel and even in some cases anti-Semitic hate on campus, and they don't want to alienate. They realize that this is the only way out. They can't satisfy their protecting their Jewish students and allowing them to have free speech while and they feel like they're indulging. They want to indulge the anti-Israel students, and they realize they can't thread that needle, and they need to find a way out. And institutional neutrality is the way to do it. It's saving the most political faces possible. That is the reason. The hypocrisy on free speech. I mean, these colleges were not free. Fire's ratings show how poorly the Ivy League schools were doing on free speech. Harvard, got an F. And now they're rediscovering they're not rediscovering the principles of free speech, but they're rediscovering how it can be politically helpful. So you don't have the crises that they've been experiencing over the last year. So I think it's a great development. I think the notion of like public schools giving students like an hour to protest their favorite policy, this never should have happened. Schools are a place of learning and to study, and to not have administrators putting the fingers on the scales of contentious political issues. So I hope this is the new normal, and it's unfortunate that it took October 7th and the hypocrisy on that issue for them to actually see the light.
And do you think this is going to bring them the millions that they've been losing from the Ackermans of the world rolling back in?
No, I mean, well, look, I mean, the big question to me is is Harvard always going to have that elite status, or can you really like shoot yourself in the foot so many times that there'll be a new Harvard in 20 years, like there'll be a new.
And by the way, if they're trying to figure out what to do with that money, the Free Press, it's a pretty good publication, don't you think? It's a suggestion. I'm not saying you have to, but I do want to say one thing before you close that, Batya. Josh said that he agreed with everything in my answer. And Josh, you're coming back. You're coming back as a guest on the show because you know exactly how to do it. You were both fantastic, but you said the right thing.
You stole some of my thunder, so I had to credit where credit is due.
And just FYI to future guests, I disagree with everything Michael said, and I'm still here. So.
Yes. Yes.
Josh and Franny, thank you so much. That was so interesting, and we're so grateful to you for joining us. Thank you to our audience for joining us, and remember to comment. We want to know what you think. We're reading your comments, and we're really enjoying them, whether they're positive or negative. Tune in next week for another episode of the Free Press Live, and if you haven't already done so, go to thefp.com and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Now, to play us out, here's a message from somebody who does just that.
My name is Max Lasko. I'm a senior at the U.S. Air Force Academy. I am a Free Press subscriber. I'm here in Arlington, Virginia. I'm doing summer research at the Pentagon, so I study China's influence in Latin America. I think the Free Press is important to read because it's harder and harder to find a variety of opinions today. I really do feel like I'm part of a community of free thinkers. It's so important to expose yourself to different types of thinking, and the Free Press really has a plethora of thinkers from across the political spectrum. I'm a huge fan of Nellie Bulls, so I read TGIF with my mom and my aunt every single Friday, and we are not aligned politically, but it's something we bond over every single week because Nellie's wit and humor just such a unifying voice for us. And I subscribe to the Free Press. You can too at thefp.com.